The hospital lobby is buzzing. Midday sun streams through the glass, casting long shadows. Dr. Nathan Cole stands at the admin desk. A single father, a man of quiet strength. Beside him, 8-year-old Emily hugs her backpack, sensing the tension. Then, the silence is shattered. Laura Bennett, the chief of operations, raises her voice for everyone to hear. "You're done here, Nathan. Clean out your locker. Now!" A dozen doctors look away. Nathan doesn't flinch. He unclips his badge, places it on the cold marble. Emily grabs his hand. They walk toward the exit. Suddenly, a strange wind kicks up. From the distance, the rhythmic, heavy thrum of rotor blades. Dr. Nathan Cole is 43, but the lines on his face tell a longer story. For the past 6 months, he has been a short-term contract ER physician at St. Jude's Memorial. To the staff, he's just a reliable pair of hands, the guy who takes the double shifts no one else wants. To his daughter Emily, he's the hero who always comes home, even if he smells like antiseptic and tired coffee. Nathan isn't your average doctor. Before the white coat, he wore desert camo. He was a frontline combat surgeon, a veteran of 3 tours in the Middle East where the operating room was often a tent under mortar fire. In those dusty, blood-slicked environments, efficiency meant how many soldiers you kept breathing until the medevac arrived. He left the military after a catastrophic mass casualty event, a day that saw his entire unit pinned down, and a choice he had to make between 2 dying friends. That day changed him forever. He chose civilian life for Emily. He chose a quiet hospital for a chance at peace, hoping the ghosts of the battlefield wouldn't follow him into the fluorescent-lit hallways of a corporate medical center. But peace is hard to find in a corporate hospital that prioritizes profit margins over pulse rates. Emily is used to waiting. She sits in the lobby, doing homework while her father saves lives. She knows the different sounds of the hospital, the soft chime of the elevator, the frantic squeak of sneakers during a trauma call, the low murmur of grieving families. Today, however, the saving part got Nathan into trouble. In the early hours of the morning, Nathan refused to discharge a patient, an elderly man named Mr. Henderson. The insurance algorithm said the patient was cleared, but Nathan's combat-honed intuition said otherwise. He saw the faint, almost invisible signs of a recurring internal bleed, a subtle drop in blood pressure that the machines dismissed as a fluke. He chose patient safety over the hospital's turnover efficiency metrics. Laura Bennett is the woman in charge of those metrics, a woman who trades in spreadsheets and patient flow optimization. To her, Nathan is a budget line item that refuses to follow the script. She views his military background not as expertise, but as a liability, a stubbornness that clashes with the modern, streamlined healthcare model. "The board is looking at the numbers, Nathan," Laura had hissed in his office earlier. Her voice was sharp like a paper cut. "You're costing us beds. You're costing us money. This isn't a field hospital in a war zone. We have protocols, we have insurance partners who dictate when a patient is a financial drain." Nathan's response was simple, delivered with a calm that usually unsettled people. "I don't treat numbers, Laura. I treat people. And if I send Mr. Henderson home now, he'll be dead by dinner. Is that on your spreadsheet?" The decision was swift, brutal, public. Laura wanted to make an example of him. She wanted to show the rest of the staff that no one, no matter their experience, was above the system. Standing in the lobby, surrounded by the co-workers he had helped just hours before, Nathan feels the weight of the humiliation. The sun highlights the dust motes dancing in the air, a stark contrast to the cold fury in Laura's eyes. She stands with her arms crossed, her heels clicking rhythmically on the tile as she stares him down. "We need team players, not cowboys," she says, her voice echoing off the high ceilings so that every patient in the waiting room hears it. "Security will escort you to your locker. You have 10 minutes to vacate the premises." Nathan doesn't argue. He knows when a battle is lost. He doesn't beg for his job or try to justify his clinical decisions. He knows that in 5 minutes, Mr. Henderson will probably be rushed back to the ER, and someone else will have to fix the mess. He simply looks at Laura, a long, steady gaze that makes her shift uncomfortably, a gaze that has looked into the eyes of dying men and seen the truth. He turns to Emily. The little girl is standing by her backpack, her eyes wide. "Time to go, Em." he says softly, reaching for her hand. Emily stands up, her small hand finding his. She looks at the people whispering behind their clipboards. She looks at the badge on the desk, the plastic rectangle that represented their stability, their rent, their food. She doesn't understand the politics, but she understands the hurt radiating from her father. As they walk through the automatic sliding doors, the hospital feels like a foreign country. Behind them, the life Nathan built for the last 6 months is being erased. He has no plan. He has a month's rent in the bank and a daughter who believes in him. He feels the cold air of the street hit him, a reminder that he is once again on the outside. The air outside is thick, charged with a strange energy. The wind begins to whip their clothes, pulling at Emily's light jacket. In the distance, a low vibration begins to rattle the windows of the hospital. It's a sound Nathan knows in his soul, a sound that, for years, was the only thing standing between his patients and the grave. It's a sound that means life or death is coming from the sky. The sun is bright, but the mood is heavy as Nathan and Emily walk across the hospital plaza. Nathan's mind is a storm of logistics. He's calculating. Rent is due on the 1st. Emily needs new shoes for school. The life of a single dad is a series of small, urgent fires, and right now, his fire engine just got towed. He thinks about his resume. Will Laura give him a reference? Unlikely. Will the insubordination tag follow him to the next clinic? Almost certainly. Daddy, Emily asks, her voice small against the rising wind. She's walking fast to keep up with his long strides. Did you do something bad? Is that why the lady was shouting? Everyone was looking at us. Nathan stops abruptly near a stone fountain. He kneels down so he's eye level with her, oblivious to the busy professionals rushing past them. No, Em, he says, tucking a stray hair behind her ear with a hand that is remarkably steady for someone who just lost his livelihood. I didn't do anything bad. I protected someone who couldn't protect themselves. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people angry because it's harder than doing the easy thing. Remember what I told you? A doctor's first job is the patient, not the money. Emily nods, though her eyes still hold a flicker of fear. Are we going to be okay? You always say we're a team. We're always okay, Nathan promises, forcing a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. But inside, the uncertainty is a hollow ache in his chest. He wonders if he should have just played the game, just for another month. But then he thinks of Mr. Henderson, and the thought vanishes. Suddenly, an ambulance screams past them, tires screeching as it swerves toward the ER bay. The sirens are frantic, not the usual rhythmic wail, but a panicked, high-pitched yelp. Nathan's head snaps up instinctively. He hears the tone of the siren, the specific rhythm used for a level 1 trauma, the kind where every second spent at a red light costs a pint of blood. His hands twitch. His muscles remember the rush. He looks toward the ER entrance, seeing the nurses scramble. He recognizes the code being shouted over the intercoms near the door. It's a rare, high-stakes emergency. A massive explosion on a deep-sea rig. Rumors of specialized Navy personnel involved. For a split second, he almost turns back. He almost runs toward the chaos to help, the oath he took years ago pulling at him like a physical chain. Then he feels the weight of Emily's hand in his. He remembers the badge on the table. He is no longer part of that world. He is a civilian, an unemployed father with a backpack and a daughter to feed. Let's keep moving, he says, his voice tight, suppressing the urge to help. They walk toward the edge of the park, but the environment is changing. The sky isn't dark, but the air is chaotic. The grass on the hospital lawn begins to flatten under an invisible weight. Dust swirls into miniature tornadoes, stinging their eyes. The sound is no longer a distant thrum. It is a roar that vibrates in their teeth. Emily turns around, her eyes widening as she points at the sky. Look, Daddy! Giant birds! High above the city skyline, 2 dark shapes appear. They aren't the standard, bright-painted civilian medevac helicopters. Those are nimble and light. These are massive, matte black, twin-engine military beasts, MH-60 Black Hawks, modified for medical extraction. They are moving fast, unusually fast, diving toward the hospital's helipad with aggressive precision that would terrify a civilian pilot. Nathan stands still, his heart hammering against his ribs. He knows those flight patterns. He knows the sound of those specific T-700 turbines. They are coming in hot, bypassing the usual air traffic control protocols. The wind becomes a gale, blowing Emily's hair across her face. The helicopters bank hard, their shadows sweeping over the hospital like giant birds of prey, blocking out the sun for a brief moment. The people on the sidewalk stop. Traffic slows. The arrogance of the hospital's daily routine is being interrupted by something much larger, something that smells like JP-8 fuel and urgency. Nathan watches them land. He sees the dust cloud erupt from the helipad, a massive plume that swallows the security guards who were trying to keep the area clear. He sees the hospital staff running out to meet them, looking small and confused in their white coats, like ants disturbed by a giant's boot. He starts to walk away again, pulling Emily along. He's finished with that life. He's done with the military. He's done with the trauma. He just wants to find a park where they can sit and think. Or so he thinks. The two military helicopters sit on the pad, their blades still spinning in a flat pitch roar that drowns out the city. The hospital staff is frozen. Laura Bennett has run out to the tarmac, her professional poise replaced by genuine confusion. Her hair is a mess from the rotor wash, and she's shielding her eyes from the debris. This wasn't on the schedule. St. Jude's isn't a military-affiliated hospital. The side door of the lead chopper slides open with a crash. A high-ranking officer in tactical gear, wearing the insignia of a Navy SEAL commander, leaps out before the skids even settle. He's followed by two combat medics carrying a high-tech portable life support unit that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. They aren't looking for a reception. They are looking for a miracle. The officer, Commander Vance, grabs the first resident he sees, a young intern who looks like he's about to faint. "Where is he? Where is Dr. Cole? We traced his credentials to this facility." "Arr." Laura Bennett pushes through the crowd, trying to regain control. "I am the chief of operations. We were not notified of a military transport. This is a private facility. You can't just—" Vance ignores her, his eyes scanning the windows of the hospital, frantic. "I don't care who you are, lady. Where is Nathan Cole? We were told he was the lead trauma surgeon on this shift." Laura pales. Her voice stammers, the arrogance from 10 minutes ago vanishing like mist. He was just let go. He's no longer on staff. There was a disciplinary issue." Vance's face turns a shade of red that suggests someone is about to be court-martialed. He steps into Laura's personal space, the roar of the engines making his voice sound like thunder. "You did what?" "We have a mass casualty event 40 miles offshore. A specialized Navy team was hit during a high-risk boarding. We have 3 men down with non-compressible hemorrhages, internal shrapnel that's tearing them apart from the inside. The only man in this entire region who has the surgical clearance, the security clearance, and the specific field experience to save them is Nathan Cole. He literally wrote the manual on the Iron Gate procedure." Back at the edge of the plaza, Nathan hears his name. It's carried by the wind, amplified by the officer's desperation. He stops. He looks at Emily. She looks at the helicopters, then at him. She sees the change in his eyes. The tired dad look is being replaced by a sharp, predatory focus. "Stay here, Em. Right by this bench. Don't move an inch," Nathan says, his voice shifting. The dad voice is gone. The commander voice is back, the one that had commanded respect from generals and privates alike. Nathan begins to run. He doesn't run like a doctor. He runs like a soldier heading toward the sound of the guns. He leaps over a low decorative wall and sprints across the lawn. He reaches the edge of the helipad just as Vance is shouting at Laura, who is literally shaking. "I'm right here," Nathan yells over the roar. Vance turns. Relief washes over his face, a veteran recognizing a veteran. "Sir, thank God. We need you. Now. No time for a briefing. They're in the back of Bird 2. They're leaking fast. It's the Iron Gate procedure. Only you have the hands for it." Nathan looks at the helicopters, then back at the hospital. Laura is standing there, her mouth open, looking like a ghost in a designer suit. "I'm not on the clock, Laura," Nathan says, his voice cold and sharp as a scalpel. And according to you, I'm not a team player. I'm a liability, remember? Maybe your insurance algorithm can tell you how to stop a subclavian bleed. Vance turns to Laura, his eyes like daggers. If these men die because you fired the best trauma surgeon in the country over a paperwork dispute, I will personally ensure this hospital is investigated by the Department of Defense. I will have your medical license for breakfast. Laura can't speak. The power dynamic has shifted so fast she has whiplash. She watches as the man she just humiliated becomes the most important person in the city. Nathan doesn't wait for an apology. He doesn't have time for petty victories. "Emily!" he shouts back to the bench. The little girl stands up, watching him from 100 yards away. "I'll be back soon. Stay with the nice security guard. Mr. Thompson, look after her." Nathan points to an older guard he knows, a man who once shared his lunch with Emily. The guard nods solemnly, stepping toward Emily like a sentinel. Nathan turns to Vance. "Let's move. Give me a sterile pack in the bypass unit." He doesn't have his white coat. He doesn't have his tools. He's wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. But as he leaps into the belly of the black helicopter, he has something more important than a badge. He has a purpose. The engines scream. The bird lifts with a violent jerk, banking so hard the skids nearly clip the hospital's sign. From the ground, everyone watches. Doctors who were too afraid to stand up for him, nurses who admired him in secret, and the woman who just fired him. They watch the man they humiliated rise above them, disappearing into the clouds. The interior of the helicopter is a blur of motion and shouting. The wind howls through the open door until it slams shut, plunging the med bay into a strobe-lit chaos of red and blue emergency lights. Nathan is already moved into the center, straddling a patient. The medics hand him a sterile kit. He doesn't need instructions. He's done this 1,000 times in worse places than a moving aircraft. Under fire, in the rain, in the dark. Patient 1, Chief Petty Officer Miller, shrapnel to the subclavian. Vitals are crashing. We've used 3 units of whole blood already, the medic yells over the engine roar. Nathan looks at the monitor. He sees the rhythm. It's a death march, a shallow, thready line that's about to go flat. "I need the vascular clamps, now, and get me the portable ultrasound," Nathan barks. He doesn't have a scrub nurse, so he does it himself, his hands moving with a speed that defies the turbulence of the flight. The surgery is a dance of shadows and steel. The helicopter lurches as it hits the ocean air, but Nathan's hands are rock steady. He's working in a space no larger than a closet, with blood on the floor and the smell of jet fuel in the air. He's not thinking about the hospital or Laura Bennett. He's thinking about the artery he's holding between 2 fingers, the only thing keeping Miller from drifting away. He works with a cold, calculated intensity. He makes decisions in milliseconds. A snip here, a stitch there. He is bypassing the standard protocols, the ones Laura Bennett loved so much, and going straight for the heart of the problem. He's using techniques he invented in a trench in Fallujah, things the insurance companies haven't even named yet. "He's braiding! We're losing him!" the medic screams. "No, we're not," Nathan growls. He reaches deeper into the wound, his fingers finding the source. "Clamp!" 10 minutes in, the monitor stabilizes. The frantic, high-pitched beeping slows to a steady, healthy thud. "He's back," the medic whispers, staring at Nathan in awe. "I've never seen anyone move that fast, especially in a Black Hawk." Nathan doesn't smile. He doesn't have time. "Next one. What's his status?" The second patient is worse. A collapsed lung and a piece of debris lodged near the spine. For the next 40 minutes, Nathan lives in a world of blood and pressure. He is the only thing standing between these men and the end. News of the rescue begins to filter back to the hospital via the military channel. In the ER, the nurses have turned on the radio. They hear the updates. "Successful field stabilization. Dr. Cole is performing miracles at 3,000 feet. All 3 patients are now stable for transport." In the administrative office, Laura Bennett sits in silence. Her phone is ringing off the hook. The board of directors has heard. The local news has heard. The news cameras are already arriving at the hospital gates, asking why the hero surgeon was fired just before the call of his life. An hour later, the helicopters return. They descend like gods returning to Earth, the sun setting behind them in a blaze of orange and purple. The hospital lobby is packed, not just with staff, but with patients and visitors who have heard the story. This time, nobody is looking away. The doors open. Nathan steps out. He's covered in sweat. His sleeves are rolled up. His flannel shirt is stained with the dark, heavy blood of heroes. He looks exhausted, aged 10 years and 60 minutes, but his eyes are clear and piercing. Emily breaks through the crowd, screaming, "Daddy!" He catches her in his arms, lifting her high, the blood on his clothes a badge of honor, far greater than any plastic ID card. The crowd erupts into applause, a thunderous, rhythmic sound that shakes the lobby. It's not just a welcome back, it's an ovation for a man the system tried to break, but couldn't. Commander Vance stands beside Nathan on the tarmac, his hand resting on Nathan's shoulder. He addresses the crowd, the flashing cameras of the local news, and most importantly, the hospital board members who have rushed down to the lobby in a panic. "Today," Vance says, his voice booming like a cannon, "Dr. Nathan Cole saved the lives of 3 of our nation's finest Navy operators. These are men who do things you'll never read about, and they are alive because this man has a set of skills that cannot be replaced by an algorithm. He is a national asset, and any institution that doesn't realize that doesn't deserve him." The chairman of the board, a gray-haired man who looks like he's ready to fire someone else, steps forward. He looks directly at Laura Bennett, who is trying to shrink into the shadows, before turning to Nathan. "Dr. Cole," the chairman says, his voice formal but sincere, "there has been a grave misunderstanding regarding your status here. We were misled about the nature of your clinical decisions. It has come to our attention that Mr. Henderson, the patient you refused to discharge, was just readmitted with the exact internal bleed you predicted. You were right. We were wrong." Laura Bennett is forced to step forward. She looks like she's swallowed a lemon. I'm sorry, Nathan. I was focused on the wrong things. I let the metrics blind me to the medicine." Nathan looks at her. He doesn't feel petty. He doesn't feel the need for revenge. He simply feels the truth of the moment. He remembers the feeling of Miller's heart beating against his fingertips in the helicopter. That's what matters. "I'll come back," Nathan says, his voice quiet but firm, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "But on one condition. This hospital stops being a business first. From now on, clinical decisions belong to the doctors. Patient lives come before profit margins. I want an oversight committee of surgeons, not accountants. If you can't agree to that, I'll take my cowboy skills elsewhere. I think the Navy has a few openings." The chairman doesn't hesitate. He knows the PR disaster he's facing if Nathan walks. "Agreed. Effective immediately, you are appointed as the chief of trauma surgery. You'll have full authority over ER protocols." The crowd cheers again, louder than before. The doctors who looked away earlier now come forward to shake his hand, their faces filled with a mix of shame and admiration. Nathan accepts the gestures with a simple nod, but he doesn't linger. He looks down at Emily. She is beaming, her chest puffed out with pride so much it looks like she might float away. "Ready to go home, Em? I think we've had enough hospital drama for one day. Can we get ice cream? 2 scoops?" she asks, her eyes twinkling. Nathan smiles, the first real, relaxed smile of the day. "Make it 3, and the biggest waffle cone they have. We're celebrating a victory for the team." As they walk away from the hospital, the helicopters begin to take off again, heading back to their base. The noise fades into the distance, leaving the city in a peaceful twilight. The hospital stands tall behind them, its lights beginning to flicker on. It's the same building, but the atmosphere inside has shifted. The system didn't define Nathan Cole today. He defined the system. He reminded everyone that at the end of the day, medicine isn't about numbers or beds. It's about the person standing in the gap between life and death. Some callings are too loud to be silenced by a pink slip. Some heroes don't need a badge to be recognized. They just need the moment the world calls their name and the courage to answer it. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe. Some callings never disappear.